How important is flexibility for Shaolin monks? How much do they usually stretch, and would I recommend to you that you stretch the way that they do? Because it can get pretty crazy. My name is Real Shaolin Disciple. And these questions and more will be answered now after this intro that is totally not try hard. I think I'll have to say this in the beginning of each video, but I spent 3 years at the Shaolin Temple. Click on this video to find out more. But let's get into it. Flexibility is a crucial part of Shaolin Kung Fu. When people ask me how they should prepare for their Kung Fu training, or maybe they plan to go to China to go to a Shaolin training camp or something, the answer is always the same: stretching. Also learn Chinese, but that's a different story. When I arrived in the temple, I was able to touch my toes, but that was about it. And I was also able to touch other things. And then thanks to my master's stretching routine, I was able to get into splits within about 1 month, and the box split took me a little bit longer. Back then, I didn't quite understand my master's obsession with getting me into splits, but in retrospective, it was the right approach because being flexible is really at the foundation of Shaolin Kung Fu. Why? Because when you're more flexible, it just leads to you being able to use more of your body, to be able to do more with your body. Forget about martial arts for a moment. It gives you more freedom of movement. And because Shaolin has a lot of simple and direct movements in combination with more elaborate and complex movements, being flexible is absolutely essential. You will never be adequate, good enough, sufficiently, what is the word? If you don't have a minimum amount of flexibility. And that definitely includes the front split. There are stances that you won't even be able to do without being flexible enough, like the poo-boo. And all of this does not just include the flexibility in your legs, but also in your back, which is particularly important for people who practice a lot of acrobatics. But let's get into more detail. The training usually starts with about 10 minutes of jogging, and then we do some sprints or jumps or whatever, and then the stretching begins. Now, when you go on YouTube and you look for videos how to get into splits, you will find plenty of videos of people explaining to you their ingenious and amazingly smart exercises that you should do, but that's not how it's done in the temple. Sure, sometimes you're given some time to prepare before the splits, and then you can do whatever exercises you want, but when the master arrives, getting into splits means doing the splits. That means controlling your breathing, which a lot of people forget. This sounds really esoteric and like blah, 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 but it's really important. If you stop breathing due to the pain, this will lead to your body tensing up, and that can lead to injury. So even if it sounds counterintuitive to you, you have to keep breathing and relax. It's for your own good because the master does not always care. His interest is that your butt touches the floor, whatever it takes. This means arms up in the air so that you can't push yourself up, and the master is coming up from behind and pushing your thigh to the floor for about 30 seconds. This is very painful, but you have to take it or leave. This is done on both legs, then you stand up, you run or jog a couple of circles to kind of relax yourself, and then you have to go again, round 2. So in the temple, we had 2 long training sessions a day, so that means 4 times front splits per lesson, times 2, so 8 times splits per day, not including box splits, and not including back stretching, and not including days when you have dedicated stretching sessions. Like only for stretching. This is extremely effective, and it got me into splits within 1 month. Now I'm going to put a huge asterisk here because later in the video I want to talk about whether I would recommend that you stretch like this. So please watch till the end. The answer is no. Kind of. Maybe. Now the box split. That one is way more intense, at least I think. I could tell you some stories. I've met people, some crazy people, and some very tough people at the temple. The toughest of the tough, like the kind of people that got hit in the head so much they're not afraid of pain. But when they have to do box split, they cry and whine like little babies. And I'm not even judging them for it, because stretching pain is a different kind of pain. It breaks a lot of people. It broke me. So if you're not low enough yet, there's nothing much that can be done. You just have to be pushed down. That's it. This part is boring, but in my experience, it progresses fairly quickly. The closer you get to the ground, the more difficult it becomes. And here we have a couple of classic Shaolin torture techniques. So at a certain point, they start to do the complete brain annihilation technique. That's the name I have given to it. This is torture. You go down into split as low as you can. The master sneaks up behind you, grabs you under your arms, and starts to sit down on your butt. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing you can do at this point. Nothing. Please get this into your head. You are completely at the mercy of the person pushing you down. You can only scream Actually, you can't scream because then you will get slapped. You can't get up. You cannot move your legs. You cannot move your arms. You can barely move your head. It's okay. The only way to save yourself is to breathe and relax and hope that you get to see another day, i.e. another stretching session. And then the last level for box split is the slow one, my favorite. This starts when you're about 0 to 10 centimeters left from the ground. Oh boy. So the way it works is that you lie down with your chest on the ground and your arms extended away from your body. You have to do that so you can push yourself up. Now the masters at Shaolin will merely tell you to stay in that position for 10 to 20 minutes. That's it. They won't touch you. And what happens with this strategy is that about 5 minutes in, you will start losing the power in your legs and your hips to push yourself up because the pain is still there and you don't want to slide down. But after a while, the weight of your body will automatically slide you down into split. You can't fight it. This is a very slow and creeping process and it's mentally draining. And it's the only stretching exercise, I think, where I've ever cried. Not like crying like hardcore crying, but like lying on the floor and like one slow tear rolling down the cheek. That kind of crying. Sad boy crying. Instagram crying. Back stretching is often overlooked, but it's important. The most basic and common exercise for this in the temple is to go into the bridge from a standing position and then try to go back up. I think my master once almost broke my back Bane style when he was stretching me, and I will never forget the day because that was, I think, the worst pain I've ever experienced. I was screaming. That was bad. So yes, that's how it's done in the temple, 6 times a week. I am very grateful and also a tiny bit proud that I made it through these years unscathed. Their methods definitely worked for me, but now let's get to the important question of whether I would actually recommend this style of stretching for you. My wife, who's right there, say hello. Hello. She also trained in the temple and she got severely overstretched by a master at one point because he didn't know when to stop. This does happen. This is kind of the Chinese way because the best will automatically rise to the top and the quote-unquote weak will break and it doesn't really matter. I totally understand why they think this way and where that's coming from, but I also believe that some people do need individualized help and a more personalized approach. At the Shaolin Temple, they don't have the patience, nor the culture, nor the interest to look after your personal sensibilities. If you saw what I saw, how they stretch kids in the temple, yeah, this is hard to talk about because it's not my job to... It's undeniable that this is not possible in the West. And if I had video footage of that, I think most people would call it child abuse. Why do I say that? Because we've had people in the temple, foreigners who saw that and then tried to intervene and they complained, which is totally unacceptable, of course, because you can't come to the temple and tell them how they should do their job. And also, I think an argument can be made that it's a bit hypocritical to marvel at amazing Shaolin Kung Fu performances, but then once you see the pain and the sweat and the blood and the tears that is behind that, then you cry and you're like, oh, how can they do that? That's so horrible. Why can Shaolin monks achieve these amazing things? It's because they go through insane training. You cannot love the product, but hate the way it's made. Right? Does that make kind of sense? I'm not saying it's right either. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a different question. Bottom line, these kids that come to the temple at a young age, they get stretched into the splits hardcore and it's extremely effective. And you also can see right there that flexibility is the foundation of everything. There may or may not be some trauma involved, which may or may not be worth it. As you can tell, it's also a hard question for me to answer. One last thing. I remember a few years back, I saw this video that was coming from the US of cheerleaders getting pushed down into splits by their coach. And you saw them crying and yelling, please stop and all that. And there was a huge outrage. Now, I don't know everything about that story, but just going off of the video alone that I saw, it's not clear from the video alone whether that's abuse or not. Because stretching is painful. People cry and scream during stretching. I remember that when I was teaching people in the temple, some of them had safe words because they said they cry during stretching and they scream during stretching. They scream, no, 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 but they don't want you to stop because that's how it is. They have a safe word. Then I know it's enough or it's too much. So just going off of the video alone does not tell me if it's abuse or if it's not abuse. Stretching is painful. Of course, you should be careful, but that's just how it is. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I'm gonna do more Shaolin videos. If you have any subject matters that interest you or questions that you think I should answer about the Shaolin Temple, you can just put in the comments or something. Okay, cheers.